for the love so pure and free. Oh, we thank thee. Yes, we thank thee. Every flower that blooms, birds that sing, fish that swim, and the light of the moon. We thank thee every day as we kneel and pray that we were born in eyes to see this thing. We thank thee for the fields, for the clovers blow. We thank thee for the pastures, the cotton and row. We thank thee for thy love so pure and so free. Oh Lord, we thank thee. Amen. Yes. Amen. Amen.
I am Gideon ben Joash. My story begins during the period of the Judges, which was the dark ages of Jewish history. When God delivered us from Egypt and brought us to the Promised Land, we did not drive out the Canaanites, as God asked us to do. We settled down alongside them, and soon our behavior and even our religion began to look like theirs. The Bible says they did not drive out the nations as God had commanded them, but they mingled among the heathen and learned their ways. They served their idols. As a result, God could no longer protect us as He wished, and soon a new evil swept down on us. They were called Midianites, and they came from the deserts to the east. And they spoke a language that was the ancestor of the Arabic language spoken today. They had a new weapon that we had not seen before: camels. Up to this time, the desert tribes had ridden on donkeys. We all knew about camels, but they were notoriously bad-tempered beasts, and everybody avoided them. But the Midianites realized what a weapon camels could become if they were domesticated. And so they did that. They domesticated the camel. And suddenly the Midianite armies became terrors of the Middle East, riding camels and moving very, very fast. Midianite raiders invaded my country in greater and greater numbers and swept clear across the land down to the border of Egypt. They stole all our food. We were starving. It was like a plague of grasshoppers. We could not withstand them. We hid. We hid in caves or in ravines in the wadis, and we tried to hide our small supplies of food. For 7 years, the Midianite plague decimated the land of Israel. And finally, we began to remember Yahweh, God of our ancestors, and cried to Him for help. One day, I was threshing wheat in a secret place, trying to hide it from the Midianites. And suddenly, an angel appeared, sitting under the oak tree. Yahweh is with you, you mighty man of valor. Please, sir, if Yahweh is with us, then why has all this happened to us? Where are all the miracles our fathers told us about? They said, Yahweh brought us out of Egypt with miracles and a mighty arm. But now Yahweh has forgotten us and given us to the Midianites. And then the angel said to me, go, you will save Israel from the Midianites. Have I not chosen you? Please, Lord, I said, I cannot save Israel. I'm insignificant. My family is small and unimportant, and even my brothers are bigger and stronger than I am. And the angel said, surely I will be with you, and you will smite the Midianites. Suddenly I remembered that I had forgotten my manners. My family had taught me to be hospitable. In fact, hospitality was a great principle among our people. We remembered that our father Abraham was famous for his hospitality. Wait here, I told the angel. I will go and get you something to eat. I will wait, the angel said. I went and I got some soup and some meat and some bread and brought them back. Put them on the rock, the angel said. I did. The angel had a sword in his hand. He touched the food, and flame gushed out of the rock and burned the food to charcoal. And then he disappeared. I was confused. I went home. I thought about all of this. That night, after I fell asleep, the angel came back in a dream. He said, tear down the Baal altar that your father built, and build an altar to Yahweh in its place, and offer a sacrifice on it. I got up immediately. I awakened some of my father's servants, and we went out in the dark, and we did what the angel said. We tore down Baal's altar, and then we built a new one for Yahweh. The next morning before sunrise, the men of the town brought a cow to sacrifice to Baal. Next slide. Just as they had always done on holidays like this one. But the Baal altar was destroyed, and an altar to Yahweh had been set up in its place. They asked questions all over town. And finally they figured out that I had done it. They came to my father and they said, bring us your son. He must die because he threw down the altar of the great Baal. But my father was cool. He stood there quietly and faced them down. So, tell me this. If Baal can't defend his own altar, how will he defend you against the Midianites? Silence. Jaws dropped. People stared at each other in surprise. Soon embarrassed grins began to spread across faces. Sheepish expressions. Somebody laughed. He's right, somebody said. And that gave them something to think about, and they went away. But the following week, an enormous army of Midianites came up and camped in the valley of Jezreel. Terror spread through the Israelite villages. Give me a sign, I asked the Lord. If you want me to lead an army against them, give me a sign. Okay, here's what I'll do. Tonight, I will leave a fleece out in the open. Tomorrow, if the fleece is wet and the ground is dry, then I'll know that you want me to go to war against these raiders. And the next morning, the fleece was wet and the ground was dry. But I suddenly had second thoughts. Was this maybe just an accident? Or maybe it had been a dry night and somebody had played a trick on me and soaked the fleece. I tried again. Please, God, don't be angry with me. Let me ask for one more sign. I'm going to put the fleece out again. And this time, we'll do exactly the opposite. This time, if the fleece is dry and the ground is wet, then I'll know for sure that you want me to go. The next morning, The fleece was dry, and the ground was wet. I'd been a fool for doubting the words of the angel of Yahweh, but now I had no excuse. There was no room to doubt his words at all. So, I blew the shofar through all of Manasseh and Asher and Naphtali and Zebulun, and the men came out to join me. More than 30,000 men responded, and we marched to the well of Harod. It was hidden behind a hill that overlooked the Midianite camp. With Purah, my lieutenant, I crept up to the top of the hill. We peered carefully over the top, and there, covering the floodplain of the Jezreel, was the Midianite camp. We started trying to count them. "How many do you think?" I asked. Purah's eyes were open wide. "More than 1,000, he said. I shook my head. 1,000? 1,000? Way more. Several thousand. Many thousand. In fact, there were even several thousand tents. And how many more men? The tents would hold how many? 5, 6, 7, 8 or more? The whole camp swarmed with men. Circled in the middle of the camp was a stockade where a herd of camels bawled and brayed. Stacks of weapons stood beside every tent. Bows, javelins, swords, war clubs. Smoke from the cook fires hung in a low cloud over the camp. Purah and I pulled in our necks and started back. There below us was our own camp. Compared to the Midianites, we were so few. My stomach churned. Pathetic. How can our small army defeat that vast horde? I stood there for a minute. Panic began to rise in my throat. And then a tall soldier, a great warrior, suddenly stood beside me. "Fear not," he said. I knew him. I knew that voice. It was the angel of the threshing floor. He has come to give me advice, to tell me how Yahweh will defeat this massive force of camel troops. I was excited. This was surely a promise of victory. And then quietly, firmly, the angel of Yahweh spoke. "You have too many men." What? "You have too many soldiers. If you win the battle, your men will forget about God, and they will say, 'We won this war.' So this is what you must do. Go down to your people and say, 'Whoever is afraid and wants to go home may go.'" I went down to our camp. I was stunned. It was like I was walking in a trance. They saw me coming and crowded around, eager for a report from my spy mission to the top of the ridge. My mouth was dry, but I had to say it. One before that. One back. Huh. Okay, I don't know. Okay, my mouth was dry, but I had to say it. Whoever is afraid and wants to go home, go now. Shock, disbelief, doubt, even some anger. I could see it in their eyes. They thought I had lost my mind. They were all having second thoughts, misgivings, worries. Why did we follow this idiot? It was written on every face. Immediately, men turned and started to leave. I noticed that Purah was standing beside me again. "They're all going to go," he wailed. I didn't reply. I was sure he was right. More and more men went back and picked up their packs and their weapons and their gear and headed out. Some of them turned and glared at me. Some shook their fists. Gripes and grumbles rumbled through the camp. But something else was happening. They weren't all leaving. Some men were still standing there, looking at me, waiting, wondering. They were scared, but they hadn't left. Well, I thought, at least now I have the dedicated ones, the ones who really love Yahweh more than anything, the brave ones, the real patriots, the men of faith. Well, I suppose we'll all go out there and die together. Sit down, I told them, and they did. And I could now see the whole group better. I still had about half the number that I had earlier. And Pura, my lieutenant, was still standing there beside me. I realized that the angel warrior was there too. Did Pura see him? No, I don't think he did. Did the soldiers see him? Definitely not. And the angel turned and looked me in the eye. You still have too many men. I don't know what I said or what I did or how I looked. Stunned is not a strong enough word. Here's what you'll do, the angel said. Take them down to the creek. On your feet, I ordered. Down to the creek. They were still looking at me, worried, confused. But they got up and headed down to the creek. Tell them to drink, the angel said. Okay, men, everybody get a drink, I commanded. Now, said the angel, watch carefully. Watch for the men who stoop and scoop up a drink in their hands. Separate them from the ones who lie down and stick their face in the water to drink. By now I was far beyond argument. I was stumbling ahead, just following orders, too shocked to do anything else. I waited. I watched. Okay, we're going to separate the men, I said to Pura. The dazed look on Pura's face had become permanent. Okay, men, I shouted, listen up. I need two groups. Those who laid on their bellies and drank with their faces in the water, you come over here with me. And those of you who reached down and scooped up water and lapped it with their hands, you stand over there with Lieutenant Pura. The men were in the same stunned condition that I was in. Their faces were confused, apprehensive. But they did what I ordered. Soon we had two groups. The angel spoke. Send home the ones who scooped the water with their hands. Keep here with you the ones who laid on their bellies and stuck their faces in the creek. They will be your army. I looked. Pura's group were the men who had scooped the water and drank from their cupped hands. And they were by far the larger group. I shook my head. I took a deep breath. Send your men home, I said to Pura. Horror flashed across Pura's face.
Yeah.
But he followed orders. Okay, you men, you're dismissed. You can go home now, he shouted. And they did. And I turned and looked. Standing beside me was a small group. The angel spoke. 300 men. By these 300 men, I will save the nation. I will deliver the Midianites into your hand. I was horrified. Our force was now so small. And the men who had been eager to fight, the men who had scooped the water hurriedly, they were the very ones that the angel sent home. And he left us, the reluctant ones, the ones who dwaddled, who lay on their bellies and drank with their faces in the water. That's all we had, 300 misfits. Yes, sir, answered the angel. As Yahweh commands, we will do. Good, said the angel. Then this is what you'll do. You will issue each man a shofar, a clay pot, and a torch, one of each to each man. But I don't have them, I sputtered. Yes, you do, said the angel. They're in your baggage depot, under the oak tree beside the creek. Okay, Pura, I said, take them down under that oak. The angel was right. 300 shofars, 300 pitchers, 300 torches. Who brought those? I had no idea. Pura, I said, equip the men. Every soldier must get one shofar, one pitcher, and one torch. Yes, sir, Pura replied. He turned and barked his orders. Asnath bin Barak, Reuben bin Gittai, Yirmiyah bin Hilkiah, you three, come with me. And he quickly organized the work and began to equip the men as the angel had ordered. By now, the sun was going down. The great angel warrior spoke to me quietly. Gideon, Gideon, are you afraid? Was I afraid? Was I afraid? I just looked at the angel. I couldn't answer the question. He knew the answer. Okay, he said, take Pura with you. Go back up to the crest of the ridge again and look over at the enemy camp. Be quiet and listen. Pura and I crawled back up the ridge. It was only about 3 hours since the last time we were there, but it seemed like a month. We reached the crest and carefully we raised our heads over. The night was now dark, but the camp was lit with cook fires and watch fires. I could smell food cooking. I remembered how hungry I was. Midianites swarmed over the camp like a plague of locusts. The camels were still braying and bellowing. Thousands of them. Listen, the angel said. Listen. From one of the closest cook fires, we heard a voice. The Midianite language was close enough to ours that I could understand it. I just had a dream, a man said. Oh, somebody replied. Yes, I dreamed that a loaf of barley bread tumbled down from that ridge behind us. It hit our tent and knocked it flat. Oh, the other man laughed. You and your stupid dreams, you know what this means? Ha! You're going to wet your pants when I tell you. Oh, knock it off. No, you asked about the dream, and I'm going to tell you what it means. You won't sleep all night. Come on, knock it off. You don't know how to interpret dreams, and you just want to scare me. Ha! You're afraid I can interpret dreams, and you're afraid to listen. So whether you want it or not, I'm going to tell you what it is. The barley loaf is the sword of Gideon ben Joash of Israel. Allah has delivered Midian into his hand, and tonight you're going to die. Oh, shut up and quit it, the first man sputtered. Loud laughter around the cook fire greeted him. I turned and looked at Pura. What do you think? Pura was grinning from ear to ear. That dream was from Yahweh, and so was the interpretation, whether they believed it or not. Absolutely, I said. I think my grin was even bigger than Pura's. We crawled back down the hill. Line up, men. Line up quietly. Yahweh has delivered them into our hand. Pura Hasari, you will take 100 men and go out to the right shoulder of the ridge. Stay just out of sight below the top. Reuben ben Gittai, you will take another 100 and line up just below the crest of the left shoulder. I'll take the remainder and we'll go up the front of the hill. Everyone, light your torches. Hide them under your pitcher. Nurse your fire carefully. We don't want any torches going out. And above all, everybody, stay out of sight. Pura and Reuben quickly divided the men. Everybody was striking flints and lighting torches. Some had to borrow flame from their neighbors. Men were blowing carefully to nurse their flames until all 300 had torches smoldering under their pitchers and stood in 3 platoons. When I was satisfied, I gave my final orders. Here it is, men. Here's the battle order. You will all line up just under the brow of the ridge, just out of sight of the enemy camp. When I blow my shofar, you all blow yours. Sprint over the top of the ridge and charge down toward the enemy camp. Smash your pitchers, wave your torches, shout, "The sword of Yahweh, the sword of Gideon." Now they were excited. Now they were sure that Yahweh was working for them. Now they believed in victory. Quietly, they climbed up the hillside and stood silent in the dark. The smell of smoking torches hung in the air. 300 dull glows of soft orange light gleamed from below inverted pitchers. Once again, I stuck my head over the ridgetop. The Midianite camp was quieter now. It was just about time to set the middle watch. I waited. Long minutes passed, but I could wait for the time the Lord appointed. Far down in the Midianite camp, a single shofar blew the midnight watch. This was it. This was the time. I drew a big breath. I stood to my feet. I blasted my shofar, smashed my pitcher, waved my torch, and shouted. From all along the ridge, there was a roar of shofars, smashing pots and shouts. "The sword of Yahweh, the sword of Gideon." And we charged down the slope. We drove straight into the Midianite camp. The whole scene was instantly a vast melee of confusion and noise. Louder and louder screams, wails, shouted orders, counter orders, pandemonium. Tents here and there burst into flame. Men ran toward us. Men ran away from us. Some seized their weapons and began swinging blindly, striking each other down. The shrieks of wounded and dying joined the confusion. The camels were breaking out of their pens, trampling and kicking and biting. "Keep order," I shouted. Purah and Reuben began barking commands, keeping men in line. We pushed the Midianites ahead of us, up Jezreel Valley toward the east. I called my messenger, young Yoav ben Orman. He was just a teenager, but he was a reliable man. "Run, collect all the messenger corps. I need messages sent to Naphtali, to Asher, to Mount Ephraim. Tell them all to rally, come down now against the Midianites, and cut off the fords of the Jordan at Beth Arba. Is that clear?" "Yes, sir," Yoav saluted. "Call out Naphtali and Asher and Ephraim. Cut off the fords at Beth Arba." "Yes, sir," he grinned and disappeared. The pursuit lasted through the night. We drove the Midianites against the banks of the Jordan, but they could not escape. The men of Asher and Naphtali had seized the Beth Arba fords. We destroyed the Midianite armies and killed 2 kings, Zebah and Zalmunna. And in the morning, a trail of Midianite corpses lay from Jezreel to the Jordan, and heaps of bodies clogged the fords. Stray camels were everywhere in the land. Before the sun was high, the men of Israel came to me and said, "Be our king. Let your son be king after you, and your grandson after that, for you have delivered us from the Midianites." "I will not be your king," I said, "and neither will my son. Yahweh is your king." But I did continue to be the judge over Israel, and for 40 years our enemies kept their heads down, and we had peace. It was an amazing thing. As I told the angel, my father's house is the smallest in Manasseh, and I am the smallest in my father's house. But that didn't bother the Lord. And the Lord didn't need my army. He cut it in half. And then he cut it again, way down, way down. Yahweh had a plan, and he made it work. And forever after, they quoted in Israel, "There is no constraint for the Lord to save by many or by few." So there it is. That's my story. And that's the message of my life. And I hope you learned it today. It's not the size of the army that matters, because there is no constraint for the Lord to save by many or by few. It's not the size of the church. It's not the size of the denomination because there is no constraint for the Lord to save by many or by few. You will never lead 300 men against the Midianites, but this verse is still yours. Because you can work for Yahweh and you can invite people to church. And your success will not depend on whether you are smart or strong or wealthy or important or well educated. You can be the most insignificant person on earth, but Yahweh can use you because there is no constraint for the Lord to save by many or by few. Father in heaven, you are not constrained. We, on the other hand, are not very important people. Our family is the smallest in Manasseh, and even our brothers are smarter and stronger than us. But it doesn't matter, because you are not constrained to save by many or by few. Amen.